And with that, Nebraska now has some complications at quarterback.
You are Locked On Nebraska, your daily Nebraska Cornhuskers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, and thanks for making Locked On Nebraska your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, the #1 sports podcast network, your team every day. And this episode is brought to you by Gametime, where you can download the app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase.
All right, welcome in. It is Tuesday. This is the Locked On Nebraska podcast. I'm Mitch Sherman from The Athletic. Connor Happer of 1620 The Zone is with me. Let's just call it what it is. Connor, for Nebraska at the quarterback position. The situation is dire for the Huskers after another QB decided to enter the portal on Monday, that being Marcos Davila, the transfer from Purdue, who spent one season at Nebraska. One season. He spent so little time here that we didn't even get to learn how to pronounce his last name correctly. Is it Davila or Davila? I don't know.
Yeah, I feel like I figured it out like at the beginning of the season, and then it got warped so many different times by people saying it different ways that I don't know anymore. I think it's Davila, but okay. I would have to check on that again.
We could check, but at this point, there really isn't any reason to do that because he's going to be leaving Nebraska when the portal opens on January 2nd after the Las Vegas Bowl, and that leaves Nebraska with, let's count them, 0 healthy scholarship quarterbacks. There is TJ Lateef, of course, who holds all the hope in his two hands. He started 3 games at Nebraska and is the starter, the assigned starter for the Las Vegas Bowl a week from tomorrow. And then you have Luke Longvall, who will be a senior in the program, and Bodie Sukup entering his 3rd year at Nebraska next season. I honestly don't know if it's any more dire than it was on Sunday. The departure of Davila, who did not crack the top 3 quarterbacks this season before Dylan Raiola was hurt, it probably just clears some room for another QB, some cap space too, someone who might actually give you a chance to win if he's needed on the field in 2026. But if you're looking at it in the view from above, that group of players at the most important position on the field for Nebraska, the room is very empty here at the end of 2025.
Yeah, well, the most important thing is the starter, and Nebraska doesn't exactly know who that is or what that's going to look like yet. And then I think you build off of that, and then you're in the same spot, that you were in last year, where Nebraska was trying to add quarterbacks to the room to create some depth behind Dylan Raiola, but you're always a little hamstrung in that situation because you're asking people to come in and be backups, and develop and whatever it might be. And they got it, they got that last year with Lateef back, winning the 2 job and then having Graham status insurance, and then Davila was there as well. So I think, they'll figure it out, right? But it's just this one's a little bit more fascinating because I think it's more open-ended in terms of where, the types of quarterback, not the types of quarterback you're going to take, because I think, we'll talk about this later, but, they're going to have a mobile element to their game. But who is the starter? Is your starter already in the room, or are they not? And then which quarterbacks can you continue to add to help that person out, whoever it is?
Right. And it's a great point to bring up that the starter is the most, by far the most, that's obvious that the starter is the most important piece, but Nebraska needs to remain focused on who is going to be that guy in 2026. Is he here? Is it TJ Lateef? Or are you going fishing for somebody that you expect to be the starter in the portal? I think that the question is, what has to happen now between now and less than a month from now, when the roster will be primarily set. It's possible that Nebraska could extend the time that it's backfilling the quarterback spot beyond January 16th when the portal ends. I think there's a world in which Nebraska could still add a freshman in this quarterback class. Of course, it lost its longtime QB commit, Dayton Raiola, in November, which was the start of the breakup between Nebraska and the Raiola family, and did not sign a QB in early December when the signing period was open. It'll be open again. There'll be another signing period in the month of February. And I don't think Nebraska's going to go sifting through the quarterbacks who were unwanted in the early signing period. But there are some out there who sign letters of intent with schools who have since lost their head coaches, which would allow them to come back into the mix if that's something that those quarterbacks want to do. And you very possibly could still have coaching moves, head coaches that leave their programs, whether it's for the NFL or an open job like, say, Michigan here in December or early January. So there might be more young quarterbacks who come into the mix of possibilities for Nebraska to sign in February. I think the more likely scenario is that they get multiple quarterbacks out of the portal, and you could be looking at players from any and all levels of play in college. I mean, all the way down from Division II up to the Power 4 level.
Yeah, I mean, nothing as far as what their background is or where they're going to be coming from. I don't think anything would surprise me at this point, because they're going to need multiple, and then you're also trying to figure out who your starter is as well. You're right. The carousel is still turning. It's interesting though. I've been thinking about this a lot over the last couple of days, where I think I settled on the idea that, I mean, obviously this person, whoever the quarterback is going to be, is going to have a mobile element to their game. And I think Nebraska wants to turn a little bit more that direction. And then I sort of have been thinking that they're going to bring in or want to bring in a quarterback who's maybe going to have more than 1 year. And you can really reach that potential, maybe not in this season, set the groundwork for this season, but do it next season or whatever it might be. And the person who fits that right now, with some experience underneath this belt, is TJ Lateef. And so I'm not throwing all my support behind that. Like, I don't have a decided horse in this race yet, because the options are just so vast. So I can't put my support behind one guy, but TJ does check a lot of the boxes. And so we don't know exactly how he's viewed in there. And I can't wait to see how it all plays out.
I was asked early this week or may have been on Sunday, by a coworker of mine at The Athletic, Manny Navarro, who does some Miami coverage and then works in like the roster management space of coverage too. And he was putting together a piece, it may have already published, on the most likely quarterback options for all of the Power 4 conference teams in 2026. And he threw a couple of names at me about, from the portal, and wanting to see if I might endorse them as possibilities for Nebraska. And my response was, if you're going to name somebody, name TJ Lateef. And I think that, excuse me, the odds, and this is what I told Manny, I would say right now I'd put Lateef at like 2-1 to be the starting quarterback at Nebraska. And then I would say unnamed portal quarterback is also 2-1. I don't think that either one of those options at this moment. Now that could change. It could change today if there's news that leaks about a quarterback who's planning a visit to Nebraska on January 2nd. Expect to see quarterbacks, not just quarterbacks, but defensive linemen, offensive linemen on campus 2 days, 3 days after the Las Vegas Bowl. Nebraska has a big basketball game on campus on Friday night, January 2nd. And it wouldn't be a bad thing if you were to bring some players in from the portal on that day the day after Nebraska returns or 2 days after Nebraska returns from Vegas, and show those guys what Nebraska sports Husker Nation can be when Michigan State and Tom Izzo come into PBA. If there's not a quarterback there that night or that weekend, that Saturday, the next day, I would be surprised. So I could see those odds shifting from where they're at now very quickly. But I don't think that I don't think it's like, hey, Lateef is the underdog in this situation at all right now.
No, it's got to be. I mean, he takes the place of a multi-year, starter out of the transfer portal. That type of guy. I think they still have the option to really go all out at the position and get one of the guys who, is climbing up draft boards and wants to be here for 1 year. It might be a tough sell to get that person here. And then that costs a lot of money out of your quote unquote cap as well. So they have to decide sort of where they want to go in that category. And frankly, Mitch, like, it's still early. Obviously the portal hasn't even opened yet, but the underground portal is really, really churning at the moment. As far as the quarterback carousel is concerned, but I haven't seen him been connected to like a whole lot of names that really intrigue me yet. So I maybe that we're just not that far along in the process, and this thing will blow up in a day or two or after Christmas or something like that. But I haven't seen anything that like blows me away to the point of like, oh yeah, that guy over TJ Lateef.
Yeah, that's I would agree with you. I don't think Nebraska's been connected to a lot of names, period.
Right.
At this point, I think they're kind of more in the feeling out stage and making and starting to make some connections. And I do think that kind of news is something that'll come out here, if not before Christmas, shortly after Christmas, when Nebraska gets on the ground in Las Vegas and you have half of the organization still working for the future while the coaches are preparing Nebraska to play against Utah. Anyway, let's take a break, come back, and we'll name some quarterbacks who may or may not get involved with Nebraska. And I want to ask this question, and that involves Trey Taylor, Nebraska's 2027 commit. A word right now from Gametime, and there's nothing like college football season and the college football postseason. Tailgates, packed stadiums, being right there in the middle of it all. You want that. If you want to go to games, you can feel that energy in the stands, the bands, the moments that you remember forever. They are out there, but actually getting tickets to get into those stadiums, well, that part used to be frustrating with long queues, logins, and prices that jump at checkout. But now Gametime has given the advantage back to the fans. Gametime is the easiest way to unlock amazing college football tickets and experiences in just a few taps. The app that Gametime puts out there for you, it's incredible, incredibly easy to use. You can go from browsing to buying tickets in just minutes. They've got zone deals. With zone deals, you pick the section, Gametime picks the seats, and then you save the cash. So knowing prices, all the fees up front, it makes the process stress-free. Take the guesswork out of buying college football playoff tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today.
All right, welcome back, and thanks for making Locked On Nebraska your first listen today, and thanks for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. We'll continue to sort out our plans for the week. There will be pods as we go on throughout this week and next week, and things like that. Yep. Mailbags to be had, so get those questions in, and we'll continue on like close to business as usual around the holidays.
Mailbag Friday. Should we do a Mailbag Friday? I think we should.
Yeah. We could produce the show over the air. Yeah, I like a Mailbag Friday. Keep it Mailbag Friday.
All right. Send us your questions. LockedOnNEB@gmail.com.
Indeed. All right. So we naming names. Where are we starting with here?
Well, the first name I wanted to name was Trey Taylor, because you mentioned the prospect for Nebraska of looking for a quarterback who can be a multi-year player, and you were talking about Lateef, but that may also be something that a multi-year starter. It may also be something that Nebraska wants to add via the portal, is not just find a one-year fix. One 1-year fixes work in college football, by the way. It's you don't need to build up a quarterback. The playoff field that remains this year, the playoff field as it started at 12 teams last week, it shows very clearly that a first-year quarterback works well in building a playoff team. But if a lot of those schools have their way, they will bring back many of them. Some don't have the option to, but let's say you're Ole Miss, you would like to bring back Trinidad Chambliss and he came from the D2 ranks to be your quarterback next season. Some are one and dones. Nebraska, I would agree with you if they can find somebody who's a multi-year player to come from the portal, or if that guy is TJ Lateef, then you're very happy about that. How does all of this and the decisions that Nebraska is making here this month and next month, how is it impacted by the looming presence of Trey Taylor as your 27 commit, somebody that you're putting a lot into in very similar fashion to the way that you wanted and intended to build around Dylan Raiola 2 years ago?
Well, I don't think you could think about it too much. First of all, you got to get there, right? If you're Matt Rule, you got to get there. You got to get to the point where he's on campus. They got to start winning some games pretty fast. So don't think about that quite yet, but he would arrive not this upcoming season, but the next, at which point he would be a true freshman, so maybe there's a redshirt situation in there. And do you have to turn the reins over to him in 28? That's 28, so I don't,
28's a long way away.
It's a long time. I don't think you really think about it much. In fact, it might even make it more advantageous for you to have a multi-year starter, thus bridging the gap, if that's the idea, to your prized quarterback commit who will arrive in 27 and potentially be ready to play in 28 or potentially 27. I don't know, so maybe it makes it even more likely that they do that.
My thought is, yes, it's far away, but it's also not that far away. Trey Taylor could be on campus with Nebraska getting ready for a bowl game or at the bowl site 1 year from right now. Not that he would play in a bowl game after the 2026 season, but it's he's already a presence and in helping Nebraska build for the future. So I don't think that you want to get him and his impact too far away from what you're planning when you lay out the future for this program. But at the same time, 2028 is realistic for TJ Lateef to be for Trey Taylor to become the Nebraska starter, and that's a universe away in college football terms. So if you have a choice in your Nebraska between, say, a redshirt freshman or a second-year quarterback, and then somebody who is like a junior or a senior, everything else being equal, you may lean in the direction of the older player. One, because you want your roster to be older, and two, because you just don't want the look of your quarterback room to be such that you're building around youth right now when you have Lateef and then you also have Taylor coming in. I think it's something that's out there to consider, not necessarily at the front of Nebraska's mind.
I don't disagree with you. It's just a tough needle to thread, I think. It's just then if you're thinking, okay, well, we can't start Lateef because he has too many years of eligibility and it overlaps with Trey, then we have to go get someone who has exactly 2 years left, and you're limiting your options in that way. So I just think probably that's a little galaxy brain. Not that Trey Taylor isn't a presence in the entire thing, because I think you're right about that. But I don't know that you think, like you said, it's a universe away. It's a long time away. So you gotta find something that works for you right now. Lay that base, before he gets here.
So first of all, Nebraska is going to need multiple quarterbacks. So you may do both of those things. You may have a young quarterback who would overlap quite a bit with Trey Taylor, and then an older quarterback who may never even be on the same roster as him, and somebody just to compete with Lateef and potentially be your starter in 2026. And I think we mentioned this earlier, you have to leave no stone unturned. I think you look at the D2 ranks. I mentioned Trinidad Chambliss came that route to Ole Miss last year. He's got them in the playoff. There's a quarterback at Saginaw Valley State named Mason McKenzie who's getting FBS offers. I'm not sure Nebraska has taken a look, but I think if you're in the Nebraska personnel department, you check that out. I think you check out a quarterback like Colton Joseph, who's leaving Old Dominion at the group of 5 level. I think you look at whether you can get in with the likes of Rocco Becht, who's leaving Iowa State, maybe heading right with Matt Campbell to Penn State, but it's a call that you want to make if you're Nebraska. It's something that you want to check out. Or even Brendan Sorsby, who's probably the biggest fish in the sea right now for Nebraska. And Sorsby gives you the one thing that very few who've gone into the portal feature in their game at this point, and that's a great running presence. Look, do I think Nebraska is going to sign Brendan Sorsby? No. I mean, he might be going to Texas Tech. He might be going to somebody else that's in the college football playoff right now. But I think you have to think big, and you have to say, look, can that be an option if you're Nebraska? So my point in naming these players, and it's very, very likely that Nebraska is not going to sign any of these quarterbacks that I named, a couple of others who either haven't entered the portal yet or who are out there somewhat under the radar as we look at Nebraska's situation, is that you have to look at everything. You know, and it's a great thing for that program in Lincoln right now, that it has an entire department devoted to personnel and portal evaluation. And those people doing that are not also trying to coach this team through a bowl game.
Ultimately, I think you have to ask yourself, if you're Nebraska with all these guys now, with that group of players that you mentioned, you know, starter caliber dudes, you know, would I rather have this person or would I rather have TJ Lateef, you know, be my starting quarterback next year? Like that, I think that's the prism you're sort of looking at it through. And then there's another, you know, section of this where, you know, you're bringing in a backup caliber guy for this year, like, but you're telling that person up front, hey, you are going to compete for the job, but you're not, you know, look around you, you're not going to be the starter. So that's the second wave of it. But I think the prism that you're sort of looking at it through is, all right, well, do I want to take, you know, Aiden Childs, for example? Like, do you want Aiden Childs or TJ Lateef? Do you want, you know, 2 years of Aiden Childs, or do you want 3 years potentially of TJ Lateef? It's, you know, I don't know. I might choose Lateef in that situation. I think Childs is a pretty promising player, but he's been to a couple different schools in 2 years. Hasn't developed all that much, and you know, he's been in some bad situations. So like, I don't know. Maybe there's so many different ways you could go with this.
I believe in a week from right now, on December 30th, the eve of Nebraska's bowl game, we're going to be talking about this with more clarity. We're going to be naming names and not just throwing out names, and because that's what we're doing right now. I know when we say Sorsby, Becht, Childs, Joseph, any of these quarterbacks, like, we're just throwing stuff out there at this point because they don't have known connections to Nebraska. I think by a week from now, there will be visits lined up, and we're going to be looking specifically at quarterbacks and what they might be able to bring to Nebraska, while keeping in mind that the Huskers need more than one. They're going to need at least 2 quarterbacks to come in and to add to the mix that is already there. And they have to make sure that they're buttoned up in retention with Lateef. So it's a lot.
Yeah. This is certainly the linchpin for all of it, because it's the position that moves first, and it sort of moves on its own, right? The underground quarterback portal. With that being said, there are more positions on a football team, and therefore more ability for people to enter the transfer portal. That happened a couple times on Monday, and we'll get through those when we return. But first, a word for our friends at the FanDuel Sportsbook. NFL Sundays, man, we got 2 weeks left in the regular season. Live betting is what it's all about, especially during this time of the year when we're talking about big time matchups, and you might have a vibe in the middle of a game and you could take advantage of it on FanDuel. Every drive, every momentum swing, every highlight moment. So you could feel it when the game is starting to shift. And that's where you head over to FanDuel.com and you place those live NFL bets all season long, because the live spreads are going to adjust instantly and you can sort of ride the wave as you go. Player props update, next touchdown scores, drive results and totals. Have it for the playoffs as well. Once again, FanDuel.com, place those live NFL bets the rest of the regular season and into the postseason. FanDuel, the game moves fast, and so can you.
Final segment on this Tuesday, December 23rd. Happy holidays. Merry Christmas to everyone out there. We'll have a show for you tomorrow on Christmas Eve, and I think we'll take the day off on the 25th. Be back with a mailbag on Friday, so get your questions in, lockedonneb@gmail.com. All right, so in addition to Marcos Davila, who went into the portal or made clear his plans to go into the portal. Nobody's going into the portal yet. It's got to get to January 2nd, but there are some others in that same situation for Nebraska who made things known on Monday. We mentioned Maverick Noonan, the linebacker edge rusher, on the pod on Monday. That happened while we were recording. He, of course, is Nebraska legacy, son of ex-Nebraska defensive line standout, NFL player Danny Noonan, Maverick out of Elkhorn South, will be moving on. And you have defensive back Roger Gradney, a speedy prospect out of the state of Texas, was the first player committed for the class of 2024, Matt Rule's first full signing class at Nebraska. Just never got healthy enough and in position to compete in a deep secondary. And Tristan Alvano, like Noonan, a local product, an Omaha player from Omaha West Side, had injury issues, was a starter as a true freshman at kicker, and struggled with some consistency. His highlight at Memorial Stadium, and it's a great one, will remain that 45-yard kick as time expired to give Omaha West Side a Class A championship in November of 2022.
Yeah, that was awesome. Called that game. That was a ton of fun. And then immediately got the offer from Mickey Joseph and company right after.
Like the next morning, the phone rang and Alvano had an offer, and that seemed like a no-brainer for Nebraska at the time because Nebraska was going through all kinds of special teams issues, and you got somebody in your own backyard who can come in and be the kicker long term. So it's another example of like how these things, they look great at one moment, like they're going to work out. And Tristan, he may have ended up being that guy. He might have been a multi-year kicker at Nebraska, but in his second season, before his second season, just dealt with some injuries that kept him off the field last year. Nebraska went to John Hole and then ultimately to the portal before this 2025 season.
I would call all of this, all the names that you just mentioned, this is natural portal movement, right? Organic portal movement.
You had Malcolm Hartzog. Yeah, you had Malcolm Hartzog late last week, which was a little bit bigger one. But yeah, even that's the expectation. There are some potential bombshells out there that could happen, that are players that are critical for Nebraska to retain, and they very likely will lose somebody in that category.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, there will be some unnatural movement. There will be some inorganic stuff where you're like, whoa, what happened here? So, like, just prepare yourself for that.
That's where Nebraska was at a year ago when it lost Prince William and Mielin. That's where Nebraska was at a year ago when Jamari Butler went to LSU and Nate Borkercher went to Texas A&M.
Prince Will had a great game in the playoff.
In the bits and pieces of the Ole Miss Tulane game that I watched on Saturday, I heard his name several times called out by the broadcast crew. He is Ole Miss's top pass rushing defender, and you think about the situation at Nebraska and how badly it could have used a player like that. So that's a devastating loss from the portal, and Nebraska, other than Raiola, has not experienced anything like that this year, but there's still time.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's going to happen. There will be a few, starter caliber players who you were excited about what they were going to look like, not only in 2026, but in 2027. You're already thinking about their future and how they're going to be all Big Ten and stuff like that. They'll go into the portal and it'll feel like the sky is falling and stuff like that. But this is just the natural, I wonder what the average is, from a Power 5 team, or even a Big Ten team. Like, how many starters are you going to lose? There's so many different situations out there. Nebraska's got a little bit of a reorganization, on its staff. So maybe that affects some people who are coming and going and stuff like that. But I wonder, where that'll sort of land for them. But you could just plan on losing 2, 3, 4 starter caliber guys,
It's such a fluid thing. Thing. Sorry, I glitched. I was tweaking there, but because if you're in a program that's going through a change at head coach or with coordinators, then you see a bump in that number. And if you have stability, I was going to point out Iowa, and Iowa clearly has stability, but then we just saw Iowa lose LeVar Woods to Michigan State. It's long time special teams coordinator, defensive assistant. So there's upheaval and turmoil even at the most stable programs in the Big Ten. And those moves on the coaching side, they directly correlate with the number of key players that you end up losing in the portal. So the instability is everywhere in college football, and Nebraska's gone through ebbs and flows in the few years that the portal has existed. When you saw a lot of instability in the Scott Frost era, the numbers were very high as far as how many players were coming and going out of the portal. And early in the Matt Rule era, it stabilized a little bit. I think we're again back in a last year and this year in a period of instability where the numbers are trending up. So Nebraska added 15, maybe even more like 17 from the portal a year ago. I believe 15 or 16 who actually came in and were part of the roster in August, and it turned into 10 starters from the portal last year. It was a great hit rate, and you see where that left Nebraska in November. So it's not just finding starters; it's finding the starters at the right spot and then putting the pieces around them as well. So there's a lot of moving parts. One thing that stood out to me about Rule's comments when he was talking about transfers on Friday, he was asked about who in this bowl practice period has been using the time to advance their status within the program, like as a launching pad for next season. You look at a player like Donovan Jones from last year and say, wow, he used that as a springboard to become a starter in the secondary. And Rule kind of laughed and said, in this portal period, I am not going to single players out. I'm not going to name names right now because of just where we're at in college football. And initially, it didn't connect with me when I first heard it. I was like, why is he doing that? He doesn't want to praise players, like he doesn't want to put too much on them, but it's more the other way. It's because he doesn't want to sound the sound the alarm that this player who's been in the Nebraska, like let's say Malcolm Simpson was having a great the defensive lineman from Texas, and I just pulled that. That's not because I've heard that he is doing well in bowl practice. Right. I don't know if Rule were to say, hey, yeah, we've really seen a lot from Malcolm Simpson. We had our young guys featured, and he's been flashing, and he's put on good weight, and we think he's going to be a big piece for us in the middle of the D line, like as soon as next year. If that were to happen, all of a sudden he starts getting offers from suitors on the outside, and Rule doesn't want to play a role in losing his own players because of something he said in a press conference.
Just think about it, like it's landmines everywhere. I mean, everyone is a free agent. Everyone has a decision to make whether they enter the transfer portal or not. And if you go off and start talking about guys, then the landmines start going off, right? Whether it, because you want to keep, if you're a coach, you want to keep almost everybody that you have. There's some natural stuff that is going to happen that's baked into the cake already, but you want to keep almost everybody on your roster. So it doesn't. I wonder if coaches even like the idea of playing in a bowl game, especially right before, right?
Why even play in November? Like,
people are going to watch the bowl game, they'd be like, "Hey, I like those players. Maybe I could give them a call, and they would come play for."
Probably just shouldn't play after Halloween, because those players are going to be getting recruited out of the portal. What if Rule were to be like, hey, the lights really come on for Grant Bricks this month, like. All of a sudden, his high school coach and everybody that he's associated with, their phones would start to blow up. So yeah, he's correct, I will say, the head coach, and probably taking that conservative tactic on who he's naming names with when it comes to this crazy December time,
especially right now. Right. The timing is everything, right? Because it just feels like it almost feels like every single person in college football is in the portal right now, because the portal hasn't opened. It's like everybody has sort of a decision to make, and we're like on the doorstep of it. We're 1 week away. People are going to go back home, and they're going to start, hanging out with their families and talking to people and stuff like that. Like everyone, you just have to treat it as if literally every single person is in the portal right now. So you are tiptoeing around everything.
I mean, it's like, hey, do you see that sports car parked down the street when a kid goes home, or he drives past a Maserati dealership in his hometown on the way back from the airport? He's like, I could have that, and all I have to do is go in the insanity.
Yeah, maybe they see like a red school bus or a red trolley coming down the street, and they're like, red. I could go to Nebraska,
Oh, there you go.
I
the signs are all around them.
Right, exactly.
Okay, let's leave this conversation. Come back tomorrow, talk more bowl prep in a pre-holiday Wednesday episode. Thanks for tuning in today. Be sure to join us tomorrow. Make sure you're subscribing to Locked On Nebraska on the audio platforms. Make sure you're downloading. Make sure you're watching us on YouTube and following us on social media. And if we made your Spotify Wrap, prove it by sending a note. Tag the Locked On Podcast Network on any social platform. They will get back to you and drop you a code to get you some great things this holiday season. For those of you on video, we're going to send you to the first ever 24/7 National Locked On Podcast Network YouTube channel. And if you're on audio, make sure you make your second listen the Locked On College Football Show. Thanks for joining us today.